Hello guys, I'm going to be doing a Java uh, tutorial series where I explain basic Java concepts, but in a way that uh, they're easier to understand, or not necessarily easier to understand than normal, but so that it forms good habits, because a lot of tutorials, if you're new to programming or object-oriented programming specifically and you don't know good habits, they don't really explain it. So that's what I'm going to be doing. They don't explain how to start doing those things early on. So I'm going to be using the Eclipse IDE and Java 8 for this video. At least most of the series probably I'll be using Java 8. So if you don't know how to set up Eclipse and the Java JDK, you can look that up and it's pretty easy. I'll include links in the description to both. So when you're in Eclipse, and by the way, this is system independent, so it's the same for Mac and Linux and Windows. When you're in Eclipse, go to File, New, Java Project, and then type in a project name. So, tutorials. And then this one, right now, it doesn't really matter, but I always use a project-specific JRE, but it's probably better to just use the default. But I'm going to be using this one, and then click Finish. And you might not have the Java option, so if you don't, then click on Other. General, or no, it's not under General, it's right here. Under Class and Interface. It might not be, it might be under Java, Java Project, or under General. You can also search for it. Eclipse lately has been changing that up, so that's where you're going to find it. And then you're going to create a new project, and then inside here, what a lot of people do when they're starting out, or even later on, which I don't understand, is they don't create a package. They just go straight to creating a class, and they don't type in a package. They use the default package. So let's say we make a class here. I'll go over this later. They'll click Finish, and it'll create a default package. And what that does is there's no folder here. It just puts all the classes inside of the source, which is, I guess, okay if you just have one class, but it's not really recommended. So I'm just going to go ahead and there we go, that was weird. Delete this. And I guess I'll show you how to rename things. So inside here you can go to refactor, and then usually there's rename, but this is default package, so it's not going to have that. Looks like I can't delete it either. Okay, I'll just move on. So you're going to create a package, and you want a good package name. So you're going to put, it's generally a reverse URL. So like if you have a website, it'll be like, it'll be like, say you're doing Google, something for Google, google.com, but instead it's going to be com.google. But if you don't have a website, then you do like com. Your username. So archive. So that's generally how that's done, at least for the type of stuff I usually do. It's not a super important thing. What this is it's going to create a file under the source package over here called com, and then inside of it it's going to create a file called varchive, or a folder, and then all your classes that you put in this package will be inside the varchive folder. And then you can add another folder inside of it if you create a new package later called archive. So that's what that is. I'm going to be using com.varchive and then main, I guess. So this is the main package. So now I'm going to create a new Java class. This one's very important. Java classes are one of the most important things in Java. So typically, a Java file will only have one class in it. You can have multiple classes in one file, and I'll go over that later. But for now, you don't need to worry about that. Think of a class right now as pretty much the same thing as your file. So you're going to create a Java class called main, and I'm not going to put that in there because I want to type it out. So click finish, and you can see it generated the class right here called main. And you could put something like public class other, and oops, you can't put public class other, but you could put class other, and don't do that yet. So you can see it creates a public class main, but if you were to run this, and it wouldn't do anything normally because you don't have any code in here, but if you go to run this, oops, I was trying to run something from earlier. So if you want to run something and you have a new project that you're making, you have to I guess it's not going to do that because I don't have any code, but you have to go into run configurations and select your class inside your project and everything. But this isn't going to run, so I thought it would try and run, but I guess it won't even try and run it in Eclipse. It's not going to run this because you don't have a main method, so it needs a main method to start running code from. So the way you do that is public, and this word public means that every class in your project can see stuff that you're writing after this. So static, and I'll probably make a whole video on static, but static, you don't need to worry too much about what I'm saying for this, but static means that you don't need to create an object in every class to use it. So like if you have an object, if you're creating a public static string test, then you don't need to, and there would be like a public main. This is called a constructor. I'll make another video on constructors. You don't need to type in main equals new main, and then main dot test equals. You don't need to do something like that. Instead, you would just do main.test equals test, and you would have different classes for that. So again, you didn't need to write that. That was just me explaining what static is for. So get rid of test, public static void main. So what this void does is we're going to write a function or a method. If you come from other languages, you're going to use calling it a function. It's called a method in Java, and this is saying there's no return type. So I'll show what that is in a bit. So then you're going to put these parentheses around it, and these parentheses signify that it's either a method or constructor. But really what these are for is putting parameters in them. And then you're going to put these two curly brackets. And then you're going to put them on a new line. A lot of people stylize it like this. I do that in C# but not in Java. Eclipse wants you to do it like this, and then a tip is if you do Command A to select all, and then Command Shift F on a Mac. It's Control A and Control Shift F on a Windows computer, and Linux I think is the same thing as Windows for that. It'll automatically format it for you, so this will be correct and stuff. But we're not done. So in here, what you're going to put here is called parameters. So main will take the parameter string args, but still not done. So after string, you need to put brackets. So what these two brackets will do is signify that this string is an array. So this, you don't need to spend too much time thinking about really, but what this is saying is that this is the main method. When you run this, it'll run the code inside this method first, and it won't run anything else. So everything else outside of this method you have to call. So if you wrote another method down here, public, let's call it private so I can explain what private is. Private void help, then you can't run this and expect help to run, even if you were to type help right here. That'll give you an error. Okay, you need to run help in here for it to run. Can't type. So that's not going to work because I didn't make it static, but that was just an illustration. So yeah. So you'll see me formatting automatically very often. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you about comments. Oh, and private. Private means that only stuff in this class can see it. So for private stuff, you'll have to create what's called getters and setters. So anyways, not going over that now. So comments. There are a couple type of comments. The two most common ones, and other things aren't really necessarily comments, but true comments are this and this. And you don't necessarily need this, but you should have it. You should put something there. That's technically right, but you should have that. So that's one type of comment. That's a multi-line comment. So I could type, and then it'll keep adding more lines. That's a multi-line comment. A single line comment is just 2 slashes, not backslashes. Backslashes are different. You can't do that. A single line comment has 2 forward slashes, and then I'm going to use comments. So if you write what your code does in a common English form that's called pseudocode, if you write little notes, they're called comments. They're basically the same thing. So I'm going to write comments throughout this to explain what things do. So this is the main method. And it's good to get in the habit of writing comments. If you're following along by writing this in Eclipse on your own, you should be writing comments like this. So this is going to be the main method, and it's generally you'll generally have a space right here. If you automatically format this, it'll put a space, but you don't need one. So this is the main method. And comments are needed because if you go back to edit code later, you might forget what something means, or it might take you a bit to understand what it means, or you might misunderstand your code. And also, if other people are working on your program, which is something that's really common in software development, then you want them to be able to understand things. If they just see straight code, it's going to be very annoying for them. So you want to add comments. So you don't need comments for everything, but generally people put a lot of comments, or you should put a lot of comments. There's an idea that if you name things correctly and you're good at programming in general, you don't need comments. That can be true, but I'm going to go ahead and say you should probably put comments anyways. They can waste time if you don't really need them, but I'm going to be putting a lot of comments in things just to illustrate and get you in the habit of putting comments. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, I'm going to end the video, and in the next video I'm going to go over variables. This was just going over how to use Eclipse and how to set up a project and stuff.